You know, sometimes I catch myself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I've made a mistake. Maybe it's the wrong decision at work, or maybe I didn't speak up when I should have. And in those quiet moments, I realize how fragile resilience feels. Like it's this invisible thread that could snap at any moment. Weird, isn't it? How easily doubt creeps in, even when we try to convince ourselves we're strong. I remember hearing a story about Elon Musk sitting in his office in the early days of SpaceX. His engineers had just told him that the rocket would almost certainly fail. And for a second, I imagine him feeling the weight of that uncertainty, the sleepless nights, the mounting bills, the pressure from investors. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing the wind could push you off at any moment. But instead of stepping back, he leaned in. He embraced the fear. Maybe that's what resilience really is, leaning into discomfort instead of running from it. I guess sometimes we think resilience is about being unshakable, about never feeling scared or anxious. But in reality, it's messy, quiet, and very human. It's that little voice whispering, "You can try one more time," even when every sign screams, "Give up." I've had moments where I almost stopped pursuing something I truly cared about. The fear, the self doubt, the "what if I fail?" It can be paralyzing. And yet, witnessing Musk's journey, I start to see resilience as more like a muscle. You build it by showing up over and over, even when your heart pounds and your mind says, "This is impossible." Let me tell you a short story. I think it captures this feeling well. Imagine a small boy on a playground, swinging higher than he ever has before. He's scared, of course, his stomach flip-flopping, but he pushes one leg over the other, leaning back, trusting the swing to carry him. Suddenly, he feels the wind rush past his face, and for a brief, perfect moment, he forgets the fear entirely. That's resilience. Not the absence of fear, but choosing to swing anyway. That boy, maybe he's all of us, really. And Elon Musk, he just kept swinging every single day. And here's the thing. Resilience isn't glamorous. It doesn't show up in headlines or flashy awards. It lives in the quiet choices. The 3 a.m. coding sessions, the phone calls when you feel like hiding under the covers. I think that's why Musk's story resonates. We see the rockets and the Teslas, but we rarely see the nights when nothing worked, when mistakes piled up, and doubt seemed like a permanent resident. But he kept going. And in that, there's a lesson for all of us. Showing up is everything. Sometimes I pause and reflect on my own failures, the projects I abandoned, the chances I didn't take, the words I left unsaid. And it hurts in that raw, familiar way. But then I remember resilience isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about waking up again and again, brushing off the dust and saying, "I'll try one more time." Even if the world doubts you, even if you doubt yourself. Maybe that's the quiet beauty of resilience. It's not a trophy, it's a habit. And like any habit, it starts small. A little courage here, a tiny act of persistence there. And slowly, those moments accumulate until you look back and realize you've survived far more than you thought you could. So, as we sit here together, just you and me for a moment, I want you to think about one small way you can lean into your own fear today. Maybe it's sending that email you've been putting off, or speaking up in a meeting, or finishing that project that feels impossible. Just one small swing. That's all it takes. And I promise you, if you do that, even once, it grows. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start to understand what Elon Musk understood, that the edge of fear is also the edge of possibility. And leaning in, that quiet, messy act, is what resilience really looks like. I keep thinking about that moment when everything feels like it's collapsing. You know the feeling, right? Like the ground beneath you is shifting, and no matter how hard you grip, you can't quite hold on. I've had days like that, weeks even. And I often wonder, why do some people keep moving forward while others just freeze? I keep coming back to Elon Musk. There's this story about the early days of Tesla, right before the Model S was supposed to launch. Money was running out, investors were nervous, employees were exhausted, and yet somehow he found a way to keep pushing. He wasn't just chasing a dream, he was fighting for it, clawing through impossible odds. And honestly, it's a little scary thinking about it. Because that kind of resilience isn't just about courage, it's about facing what most people would run from. I remember a moment from my own life, small but striking. I had this project that everyone told me was doomed. I was nervous, heart racing, doubting myself at every step, but I kept going. I made mistakes, oh, so many mistakes, but I kept adjusting, learning, breathing through the panic, and eventually, it worked. It wasn't perfect, not at all, but it worked. Weird, isn't it? How failure feels so much like fear until you keep moving forward. Maybe that's one of the biggest lessons Musk teaches us. Resilience isn't something you're born with. It's cultivated. And often it comes disguised as pain. Each setback, each failure, each no or you can't, those are the building blocks. The tricky part is not to mistake the discomfort for a signal to stop. It's just a signal to lean in. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine standing at the foot of a mountain in the dark. The peak is hidden by clouds, you can't see the path clearly, and every step you take feels precarious. You stumble, you slide back a little, you question why you even started. But with each cautious step, your muscles grow stronger, your balance improves, and slowly, just slowly, you realize you are climbing. You are moving forward. That's exactly what resilience feels like. And Elon Musk has climbed mountains like that time and again. Not in the calm, clear light of day, but in the dark, when every step requires courage. And honestly, it's a little scary thinking about it. Because that kind of resilience isn't just about courage, it's about facing what most people would run from. I remember a moment from my own life, small but striking. I had this project that everyone told me was doomed. I was nervous, heart racing, doubting myself at every step. But I kept going. I made mistakes, oh, so many mistakes. But I kept adjusting, learning, breathing through the panic. And eventually, it worked. It wasn't perfect, not at all, but it worked. Weird, isn't it, how failure feels so much like fear until you keep moving forward. Maybe that's one of the biggest lessons Musk teaches us. Resilience isn't something you're born with. It's cultivated. And often it comes disguised as pain. Each setback, each failure, each no or you can't, those are the building blocks. The tricky part is not to mistake the discomfort for a signal to stop. It's just a signal to lean in. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine standing at the foot of a mountain in the dark. The peak is hidden by clouds. You can't see the path clearly. And every step you take feels precarious. You stumble, you slide back a little, you question why you even started. But with each cautious step, your muscles grow stronger, your balance improves. And slowly, just slowly, you realize you are climbing. You are moving forward. That's exactly what resilience feels like. And Elon Musk has climbed mountains like that time and again, not in the calm, clear light of day, but in the dark, when every step requires courage. I think sometimes we underestimate ourselves.
We let fear dictate our limits. But watching someone like Musk, he doesn't let fear win. He leans into it, experiments, adjusts, and continues. And here's a quiet truth. You can do the same. Not by copying him, not by becoming him, but by recognizing that fear and failure aren't enemies. They're signals. They're the guideposts on your journey. And maybe the hardest part of resilience is patience, waiting for results, watching progress unfold at a snail's pace, feeling like the world isn't moving fast enough. Musk faced that too. He faced delays, failures, ridicule. Yet he didn't stop. He treated every setback as a lesson, every failure as data. And isn't that strange? How perspective changes everything. I want you to take a moment and think about something in your life that feels impossible right now. That one thing that keeps you awake at night, spinning in doubt. Now imagine leaning into it instead of stepping back. One careful, intentional step. Just one. That's all it takes to start building resilience. Because here's the thing, resilience doesn't mean you won't stumble. It doesn't mean you won't feel fear or doubt. It means that no matter how many times you stumble, you find a way to stand back up. You adjust, you learn, you persist. And slowly over time, those small acts of courage accumulate into something powerful, something that can carry you through moments you once thought impossible. So for now, just breathe. Let this sink in. Remember that the edge of fear is also the edge of possibility. And every time you lean into it, even just a little, you're training yourself to keep climbing, step by step, day by day.
You ever have that feeling where everything around you seems to be moving faster than you? Like life is on fast forward and you're stuck in slow motion? Yeah, I've been there. And sometimes in that space, it feels easier to just stop, to sink into the comfort of maybe tomorrow. But then you catch a glimpse of someone who refuses to slow down. Someone like Elon Musk. And it's humbling. I remember reading about those early days at SpaceX, before any rocket had successfully launched. Employees were exhausted, budgets were tighter than ever, and Musk himself had reportedly invested almost everything he had, risking his home, his future. I can't even imagine that pressure. And yet, he showed up every day, not because it was easy, but because he believed in the possibility of something bigger. And isn't that strange? How someone can carry that weight and still take step after step, despite fear and uncertainty. I think resilience often looks like that in real life, quiet, persistent, almost invisible to anyone but yourself. It's not the dramatic victories that build it, but the small, relentless acts of showing up. I remember once I had to complete a task that felt completely beyond my ability. I was anxious, panicking, thinking, there's no way I can do this. And then I just started. Not with grand plans, not with certainty, just started. One step, and then the next. And slowly, by the tiniest increments, I began to make progress. That's how Musk worked too. Every experiment, every prototype, every failed test, it wasn't a sprint. It was one step at a time, relentlessly forward. Here's a little metaphor I like. Imagine you're trying to cross a river, but the current is strong. At first, you hesitate. The water is cold, slippery rocks lurk beneath the surface, and it feels impossible. But then you take the first step. You wobble, maybe even fall, but you keep going, stone by stone. By the time you reach the other side, the river hasn't changed.
The current is still strong, but something in you has changed. You've grown stronger. You've learned how to move through fear instead of being paralyzed by it. That's resilience. That's exactly what Musk teaches, whether he realizes it or not. And I guess sometimes we forget that failure is actually a tool, not an enemy. Every setback, every mistake, it's feedback. It tells you where to adjust, where to innovate, where to try differently. Musk understood that better than most. That's why even after rockets exploded or investors doubted him, he didn't fold. He analyzed, adapted, and went at it again. And the strange, beautiful thing is, we can do that too. We just have to be willing to see failure as information, not as a verdict on our worth or ability. I want you to pause here and think about one area in your life where fear or doubt has held you back. Imagine treating every obstacle as feedback instead of a dead end. Even one tiny shift in perspective, suddenly the impossible doesn't seem so permanent. And maybe that's the first step towards real resilience. Not perfection, not heroics, but curiosity. Curiosity about what happens if you keep trying. Because here's the subtle truth. Resilience is built in these quiet, almost unnoticed moments. In the way you get up after disappointment. In the small decisions to keep moving forward. In the willingness to face fear rather than hide from it. And slowly, over time, those moments stack up until you realize that you've become someone who can handle more than you ever imagined. So take a breath. Let this idea sink in. Think about that river in your own life. One careful, deliberate step at a time. That's all it takes. And as you keep moving, even in uncertainty, you're training yourself to become stronger, wiser, more resilient. Just like him.
You ever notice how quiet moments often teach us the most? Like when the world slows down for just a second and you're left alone with your thoughts, your fears, your doubts, your hopes. I remember one night, sitting by my window, staring at the city lights and feeling completely overwhelmed. You know that sinking feeling when it seems like everything is too much? That was me. And in that moment, I thought about Elon Musk, about how he must have felt staring at spreadsheets, prototypes, or rockets that refused to work, knowing that millions of people were watching, waiting, expecting. It's strange, isn't it? How someone can carry such immense pressure and still find a way to keep going. And I realized maybe that's the essence of resilience. It's not about never feeling fear or doubt. It's about showing up anyway. Even when your stomach is twisting, when your mind is screaming, "Stop, this is too much." I guess sometimes we think resilience is heroic. But most of the time, it's messy, human, quiet, and that's okay. I remember a story from Musk's life that always stuck with me. Early in SpaceX, there was a moment when he had just one chance left to launch a rocket. Investors were on the edge of pulling out. If the rocket failed, it could mean the end, not just of a project, but of a dream he had poured his entire life into. And yet, he kept working, fine-tuning, adjusting, and somehow believing, even when everything looked bleak. That belief, it wasn't blind optimism. It was resilience. It was showing up over and over again, even when the odds were stacked against him. Weird, isn't it?
how often we underestimate the power of persistence. We see someone like Musk succeed, and we imagine it's effortless. But the truth is, it's built on countless nights of uncertainty, mistakes, and small victories that no one else sees. That's the real lesson. Resilience is invisible, quiet, and relentless. And the great thing is, we can all practice it. Not by risking billions, of course, but by showing up in our own lives in the small, meaningful ways. Let me share a little metaphor that I think fits here. Imagine a tiny plant growing between cracks in the sidewalk. Every day, the sun rises and sets, the wind blows, people walk past not noticing it at all. And yet, it keeps growing, stretching upward, breaking through what seems like impossible obstacles. That's resilience. Small, quiet acts that over time make an enormous difference. Musk's rockets, his cars, his ideas, they're like that plant. Not miraculous, but persistent. I guess sometimes we forget that it's okay to feel fear, to feel doubt. Those feelings are signs that you care, that you're pushing boundaries. The trick Musk shows us is to keep moving forward anyway. Adjust, experiment, learn, and try again. And slowly, step by step, you find yourself doing what once felt impossible. So here's a little guidance I want to offer, like I'm talking to a friend across a coffee table. Pick one small thing today where you can lean into discomfort instead of avoiding it. Maybe it's speaking up in a meeting, starting a project, or having a difficult conversation. Just one step. That's all it takes. One step, and you start building your resilience muscle. Quietly, but steadily. And as you do, remember this. Every act of courage, no matter how small, is part of a bigger story. Your story. A story where you show up, stumble, adjust, and rise again. And maybe one day, when you look back, you'll realize just how much stronger you have become. Just like Musk, quietly, persistently, one step at a time.
Ever have one of those mornings where you wake up and it feels like the weight of everything you've been avoiding is pressing down on you? I had a morning like that not too long ago, and I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, thinking, how am I going to get through today? Funny, isn't it, how even small challenges can feel like mountains when you're exhausted or afraid? And in that moment, I thought about Elon Musk, about all the times he must have felt completely overwhelmed and yet somehow kept going. There's this story from Tesla's early days that always hits me. The company was running out of money, banks weren't returning calls, investors were skeptical, and Musk had invested almost everything he had. Most people would have panicked, maybe even quit. But instead, he made a plan. Not a perfect plan, there was nothing perfect about that situation, but a plan to act, to persist, to keep trying even when the outcome was uncertain. And that, I realized, is resilience in its purest form. It's the ability to move forward when logic, fear, and doubt scream at you to stop. I remember a personal moment that feels similar. I was working on a project that seemed doomed from the start. Every step felt like a misstep. I questioned myself constantly. But instead of giving up, I broke it down into tiny pieces, just one small task at a time. And slowly, painfully, the project started to take shape. Weird, isn't it? How focusing on the next small step can suddenly make the impossible feel manageable. That's exactly how Musk operated too. One launch, one prototype, one adjustment at a time. Step by step, even in the face of enormous pressure. Here's a metaphor I like. Imagine you're trying to climb a rock wall in the dark. You can't see the top. You can barely feel the ledges beneath your hands. Every move feels risky. And yet, with each careful, deliberate hold, you inch upward. You stumble, you slip, but you adjust,
breathe, and reach again. That's resilience. That's what Musk demonstrated over and over. And the lesson for us, we don't need to see the top to keep climbing. We only need to take the next hold. I think sometimes we forget that failure and fear are actually essential parts of the journey. They're not signs that we should quit, they're feedback. They tell us where to adjust, where to experiment, where to learn. Musk understood this better than most. Each rocket failure, each investor rejection, each missed deadline, he treated them as lessons, not verdicts. And we can do the same. We just have to be willing to see setbacks as information, not as reasons to stop. So, here's what I want you to take from this. Identify one area in your life where fear or doubt is holding you back. Now, imagine taking just one small action despite it. Just one. That tiny act is more powerful than you think. It's how resilience grows. It's how you start to prove to yourself that you can handle more than you imagined. And over time, those small steps accumulate, building strength you didn't know you had. And as you sit with that thought, consider this. Resilience isn't about being fearless. It's about being willing to feel fear, to feel doubt, and yet continue. It's about showing up again and again, even when the outcome is uncertain. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of quiet, persistent courage that changes everything. Not just for Musk, but for each of us in our own lives. So take a breath. Let yourself feel the weight, and then just one step, one small, deliberate step. You're stronger than you think, and the journey, as scary as it seems, is worth it.
Ever notice how some days feel like walking through fog? You can see a few feet ahead, maybe, but everything beyond that is uncertain, hazy, unclear. I had a morning like that recently, and I just kept thinking, how do people keep going when they can't see what's ahead? It's unsettling, right? And that's exactly the kind of pressure Elon Musk faces, in a million ways, every single day. Think about SpaceX before the first successful launch. Rockets had exploded, investors were losing patience, employees were exhausted, morale low, and Musk, he was staring down the same storm, probably wondering if it was all worth it. Most of us would have backed away. But here's the thing. Resilience isn't about never feeling fear or doubt. It's about acknowledging those feelings and still choosing to act. That's a lesson I keep coming back to. I remember a personal experience that feels oddly similar. I was tasked with something that seemed impossible. Each attempt felt like failing. My confidence wavered, my energy drained. But I realized I had a choice, retreat or persist. And so I persisted. I broke the problem into smaller pieces, celebrated tiny wins, and kept going. Slowly, the path became clearer. Weird, isn't it? How clarity often comes after taking imperfect steps through uncertainty? That's exactly what Musk does. He experiments, he iterates, he keeps moving forward even when the way isn't obvious. Let me share a metaphor I like. Imagine standing at the edge of a dark forest at dawn. You can't see the full path, only the first few steps. The ground is uneven, the trees obscure your view, but you take a step, then another. Each step teaches you something, the texture of the earth, the direction of the path, how to avoid obstacles. Over time, the forest becomes less intimidating. You learn how to navigate it. That's resilience, one deliberate, thoughtful step at a time. And I think that's the subtle genius of Musk's approach. He doesn't wait for perfect conditions. He doesn't wait until the fog lifts. He starts where he is, with what he has, and adapts along the way. It's a mindset shift we can all practice, because life rarely offers perfect clarity. Fear and doubt will always be present, but stepping forward despite that uncertainty, that's how we grow. That's how we learn what we're capable of. I want you to pause and reflect on a foggy area of your life, the place where you feel uncertain, overwhelmed, or stuck. Imagine taking just one small intentional step into that fog today. Not a leap, not a perfect action, just one careful, considered move forward. That's all resilience asks of you. And over time, those tiny, consistent steps accumulate into something powerful, a quiet confidence that you can handle more than you thought possible. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about Musk and smiling, not because I want to be him, but because his example reminds me that we all have that capacity to face uncertainty, to persist, to move forward step by step, despite fear. And the more we practice, the more it becomes natural. Maybe that's the hidden lesson. Resilience isn't a trait you're born with. It's something you cultivate, quietly, in the fog, one brave step at a time. So, take a breath, feel the fog, acknowledge the fear, and then just step. One small step. That's all it takes to start moving forward. And before long, you'll see the path clearing beneath your feet.
You ever notice how life has a way of testing you right when you think you've found your footing? Like, just when you feel a little confident, the universe throws something unpredictable at you. I had a day like that recently, and I found myself thinking, why does it feel like everything is against me? And I realized that's exactly the kind of pressure that builds resilience if we let it. Elon Musk has lived that reality over and over. Remember the early days of Tesla and SpaceX? Investors pulling out, rockets exploding, deadlines looming impossibly close. Anyone else might have panicked, folded, or run. But Musk? He leaned in. He didn't let the setbacks define him. He let them teach him. He adapted, iterated, and kept moving forward, even when it seemed like the world was counting him out. That's the kind of resilience that doesn't make headlines, but it quietly shapes everything. I remember a personal moment that felt similar. I was working on something that seemed doomed from the start. Every small failure felt like proof that I shouldn't even try. My confidence wavered. And yet, I kept showing up. I kept taking the next step. And slowly, I noticed progress. Not perfect, not instant, but real. Weird, isn't it? How persistence transforms fear into something manageable, into something actionable. That's the magic of resilience. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a sailor at sea during a storm. Waves crash, winds howl, and the horizon disappears into gray. Every instinct screams to turn back, to seek shelter. But the sailor keeps adjusting the sails, correcting the course, watching for any sign of calmer waters. Step by step, decision by decision, he navigates the storm. That's what Musk does metaphorically, and that's what we can do too in our own lives. Here's a little insight I want you to hold on to. Resilience isn't about being invincible. It's about being willing to feel fear, doubt, and frustration and act anyway. It's about learning from mistakes instead of letting them paralyze you. Each small choice to keep going, even when the outcome is uncertain, strengthens your capacity to handle the next challenge. It's like building a muscle. You don't notice it growing day by day, but over time, it becomes undeniable. Think about an area in your life where you felt tested recently. Maybe it's a project, a relationship, or a personal goal. Now, imagine approaching it like Musk does, accepting that setbacks will happen, that things may fail, but that each attempt teaches you something valuable. Even one small deliberate step forward can start a chain reaction of growth and confidence. And here's something I often remind myself. Resilience is rarely glamorous. It's not the dramatic victory that looks perfect on the surface. It's the quiet daily decision to keep going, to adjust, to learn.
And over time, those quiet decisions accumulate into something extraordinary. Maybe you won't be launching rockets or building electric cars, but in your own life, in your own way, you can harness the same power. So, take a breath, reflect on where you've stumbled, where fear has held you back, and then just one small step forward. That's all resilience asks. One step, repeated over time, and slowly, you'll notice a shift. The obstacles won't disappear, but you'll realize you've grown strong enough to face them anyway. And isn't that a remarkable thing?
Ever sit quietly and think about how much of life is just uncertainty? Like, no matter how much you plan, no matter how careful you are, things don't always go the way you expect. I was thinking about that the other night, watching the stars, and I realized how easy it is to feel small, powerless even. And yet, in that very space of uncertainty, resilience is born. Elon Musk has spent his life in that space. Every rocket launch, every Tesla rollout, every idea that seemed impossible, he's faced uncertainty head-on. There were moments when failure seemed inevitable, when every reason to quit was staring him in the face. And yet, he didn't stop. Weird, isn't it, how someone can keep moving forward when the odds are stacked against them? And that's exactly the lesson. Resilience isn't about certainty. It's about action despite uncertainty. I remember a moment in my own life that feels similar. I was trying something new, something I wasn't sure I could handle. Each attempt was messy. Each step felt awkward, and often I wanted to give up. But I didn't. I kept going, small step by small step. And eventually I got to a place where I could look back and say, I made it through. That's the essence of resilience. Showing up even when you feel unprepared, even when you doubt yourself. Here's a story I like to imagine. Picture a tightrope walker, high above the ground. The wind swirls, the line trembles beneath their feet. Every step is terrifying. They could fall at any moment. And yet, they keep going. Focusing on the next step, trusting their balance, trusting their skill. That's how Elon Musk approached his work. One experiment, one prototype, one launch at a time. Not thinking about all the ways it could fail, but focusing on what they could control and moving forward. And I think that's a lesson we often forget. We treat failure like the end, when really it's just part of the process. It's data. It's feedback. Musk's failures weren't stops. They were guides. And the same applies to our lives. Every setback can teach you something, if you're willing to pay attention, adjust, and keep going. That's resilience. That's growth. I want you to pause for a moment and think about an area in your life where fear of the unknown is holding you back. Maybe it's a decision you've been avoiding, a risk you've been reluctant to take, or a dream you're too scared to pursue. Now imagine taking just one small action despite the uncertainty. One tiny step. That's all it takes to start building real, lasting resilience. Because here's the quiet truth. Resilience isn't about never feeling fear or doubt. It's about feeling them, understanding them, and moving forward anyway. It's about showing up, learning, adjusting, and trying again. And over time, those small steps transform you. You start to realize you can handle more than you thought possible.
You can step into uncertainty and come out stronger. So take a deep breath, feel that weight of uncertainty, and then just one step. That's it. One step, intentionally chosen, and suddenly the impossible doesn't feel so permanent. Slowly, quietly, you're training yourself to be resilient, just like Musk. Step by step, day by day, you're building strength you didn't know you had.
You ever have one of those moments where you look back at your life and think, how did I even get here? Like the choices, the mistakes, the tiny steps, they all somehow added up to this very moment. I had one of those reflections recently, and it made me realize how much resilience shapes us, even when we don't notice it. Weird, isn't it, how quietly it works, building strength beneath the surface. Elon Musk's life is full of those quiet, invisible moments of resilience. Think about the countless times he faced rejection, investors walking away, prototypes failing, critics doubting him. Most people would have stopped, but he didn't. He kept experimenting, learning, iterating. And that's the lesson. Resilience isn't about being fearless. It's about persistence, about moving forward despite fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I remember a personal moment that feels similar. I had a project I cared deeply about, and it seemed doomed from the start. Every mistake, every delay felt like proof I shouldn't continue, and yet I kept going, step by step. Small adjustments, little experiments, and slowly the work began to take shape. That's the quiet power of resilience. It doesn't always look dramatic, but over time it transforms everything. Let me share a metaphor I like. Imagine a river flowing over rocks. Sometimes the water hits obstacles, splashes backward, forms whirlpools, and yet it keeps moving forward. Over time, the water shapes the rocks, carves its path, creates valleys and streams. That's how Musk works. Every setback is like a rock in the river, something to navigate around, learn from, and keep flowing. And that's exactly what we can do in our own lives. I think the tricky part is patience. Resilience doesn't always deliver instant results. Musk faced years of trial and error, public scrutiny, and financial risk before seeing his vision materialize. And in our own lives, it's the same. Progress is often invisible until one day you realize you've grown stronger, wiser, more capable than you thought. I want you to reflect on one challenge you've been avoiding. Maybe it's personal, professional, or emotional. Now, imagine approaching it like Musk approaches a prototype. Experiment, adjust, learn, persist. Don't expect perfection. Don't expect immediate success. Just show up again and again. That's how real resilience grows. And here's a subtle insight. Every time you persist, you're not just working toward an outcome, you're building character, confidence, and inner strength. Musk didn't become resilient because life was easy. He became resilient because he chose to face difficulty, failure, and uncertainty repeatedly without giving up. And you can do the same in your own way. So take a deep breath and think about your next small step. Not a giant leap, not something that feels impossible. Just one action, intentional and deliberate. That's all resilience requires. And over time, those small actions accumulate until you look back and realize you've come farther than you ever imagined, and you're stronger than you thought possible. Lean into that thought. Carry it with you. And remember, resilience is built quietly, invisibly, step by step. One choice, one effort, one small act at a time. That's how you, like Musk, turned fear and doubt into momentum.
Do you ever have one of those evenings when you sit quietly, thinking about everything you've been through, and it hits you how far you've come? Not in a loud, celebratory way, but in that quiet, almost imperceptible sense that you're stronger than you were yesterday, last month, or even last year. That's the space I want to take you to now, because this is where resilience truly shows itself. Elon Musk didn't build Tesla, SpaceX, or any of his ventures in a straight line. There were failures, heartbreaks, moments of doubt, and times when it seemed like everything could collapse. Yet he kept moving forward. And the lesson here isn't that he was fearless, it's that he embraced uncertainty, failure, and criticism as part of the journey. Weird, isn't it? How strength grows most when life is hardest? I remember a personal moment that taught me this. I was working towards something that seemed insurmountable. Every day brought obstacles, some small, some crushing. I questioned my choices constantly. But then one day, after months of persistence, I realized I was no longer afraid of failing. I'd learned, grown, and adapted along the way. The obstacles hadn't disappeared, but I had changed. That's resilience. That's what Musk demonstrates over and over. Let me paint a picture. Imagine standing at the base of a mountain, looking up at the summit shrouded in clouds. The path is steep, rocky, and uncertain. Each step feels precarious. You could stop, turn back, or give in to fear. But you don't. You keep climbing. You adjust your footing, take breaks, breathe, and focus on the next step. And slowly, step by step, the peak comes into view. That's life. That's growth. That's the quiet, relentless power of resilience. I think the most important insight Musk offers isn't just about persistence. It's about perspective. Every failure is a lesson. Every setback is data. Every criticism is an opportunity to refine, adapt, and grow. And when we adopt that mindset, suddenly life's challenges feel less like threats and more like invitations. Invitations to learn, to stretch, to become stronger. So here's what I want you to take from this. As if I'm speaking directly to you, pick one area in your life where fear, doubt, or uncertainty has held you back. Now take one intentional step forward. Not a leap, not a dramatic gesture, just one step. And tomorrow, take another. And the next day, another. Slowly, quietly, invisibly, you're building resilience. You're growing stronger than you knew possible. And maybe here's the quiet magic of it. One day, you'll look back and realize that the challenges, the doubts, and the fears weren't just obstacles, they were the training ground. The work that shaped you, prepared you, and strengthened you. Just like Musk, you can transform adversity into momentum, fear into action, and uncertainty into growth. So here's what you want to take from this. Take a deep breath. Settle into the quiet
And imagine your next small step. It's simple, yes, but it's powerful. Step by step, choice by choice, moment by moment, resilience is built. And when you practice it patiently and persistently, there is nothing you can't face. Keep that thought with you. Keep moving. And remember, the journey isn't about being fearless. It's about being willing to rise again and again, no matter what.